Imagine, if you will, the 1970s, a time of what immense social change, but also, sadly, rising crime rates. It felt like the
Yeah.
very freedoms that women were fighting for were almost sparking this like terrifying backlash. And that's really where the story of Ted Bundy begins. I mean, his name has basically become like synonymous with the term serial killer, right? His crimes really shocked America, and I think changed the way we view these predators forever. And what's fascinating is that we have so much to work with on this case. We've got court transcripts, documentaries. We even have Bundy's own like chillingly clinical analysis of his crimes. So I don't know about you, but I'm ready to dive in. Are you ready to dive into this complex case with me?
Absolutely. I think it's,
Yeah.
it's one of those stories that forces us to kind of confront some really uncomfortable truths about,
Yeah.
about human nature, I guess, and the masks that evil can wear.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start by kind of setting the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, Bundy's crimes took place during a time of like, really immense cultural shifts, right? I mean, the women's liberation movement was like gaining all this momentum, challenging traditional gender roles and everything. Do you think this societal upheaval played a role at all in his crime? Do you think Bundy's rage was in some like twisted way a reaction to these changing roles of women?
Hmm. Well, it's a fascinating question, and it's definitely one that has been debated by, experts for years and years. I mean, some people definitely believe there's a connection, arguing that Bundy's like deep-seated misogyny was kind of like fueled by this
Yeah.
perceived threat to male dominance. And, it's worth noting like a lot of his victims resembled a very specific type, right?
Mhm.
These young women with long dark hair, often college students who kind of in a way represented this like newfound independence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a chilling thought. It's almost like he was targeting a specific image of womanhood.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't just like, random violence either. I
Yeah.
mean, his crimes were calculated. They were almost like ritualistic.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think Bundy's meticulous planning
Yeah.
and those specific methods that he employed, I think they point to like a deeply disturbed psyche.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like somebody snapping. It was like a real deliberate, methodical nature to his actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And he managed to like evade capture for so long. And I think part of that was because of just, the poor communication between law enforcement agencies. I imagine if they had just shared information more effectively,
Yeah.
but there's also that whole technology factor too,
Mhm.
right? I mean, DNA analysis, which is like, a cornerstone of criminal investigations now, it was in its infancy back then.
Do you think Bundy would have been as successful if he were like operating in today's world with all the advancements in forensic science? I mean, it's it's hard to say for sure. But, while all technology does play like a really crucial role, Bundy was just like incredibly cunning and manipulative. He used his charisma and his like understanding of human psychology to just totally disarm people and gain the trust of his victims.
Yeah, his charm was almost like a weapon. It's a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always like come with a flashing warning sign or something. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's one case I want to talk about that stands out as kind of like pivotal in the whole investigation, and that's the case of Carol Duranche. She was only 18 when Bundy, who was posing as a police officer at the time, tried to abduct her using that classic broken car ruse.
Oh, yeah. Carol Durance's story is incredible. I mean, she fought back, she managed to escape, and her bravery was it was instrumental. Like, imagine the fear that was gripping Seattle at that time. Women were, like, vanishing without a trace. It felt like, look, anyone could be next.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the Netflix documentary really captures that
Hmm.
that sense of dread, and it's unsettling to hear Bundy himself in these interviews, just dissecting his crime so calmly. He's so detached. It's almost like he's talking about a science experiment or something.
Right. I think that chilling detachment is, like, a hallmark of psychopathy. Like, Bundy's ability to compartmentalize,
Yeah.
to separate his emotions from his actions, that's what allowed him to, like, commit such horrific acts without any,
Yeah,
any
it's-
apparent remorse.
It is a disturbing paradox, right? I mean, he could be like so charming and engaging one minute and then utterly ruthless the next. And I think it's this duality that made him so dangerous. Now, to kind of like understand the depths of his depravity, I think we need to delve into his past a little bit, right? I mean, Bundy's childhood was, troubled to say the least. I mean, he was born in a home for unwed mothers, raised by his grandparents under like a fabricated family structure. There are like hints of potential abuse and exposure to to violent media. So I guess like the question is, how much of his darkness, so to speak, can we attribute to his upbringing?
Well, that's that's the question that has haunted like criminologists for decades, right? Nature versus nurture, and unfortunately, we can't say for certain, but I think it's safe to say that Bundy's early experiences likely played a pretty significant role in shaping his worldview.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. All the secrecies surrounding his birth, the potential for abuse. I mean, these things, they could have created like a really deep sense of shame and isolation leading to this distorted sense of self and just a total lack of empathy.
Right, right. It's almost like he built his own reality in a way, one where he was like the central figure, right? Entitled to control and manipulate those around him. I think this need for control, like, that seemed to be at the core of his being, would you say?
Absolutely. I mean, Bundy's crimes weren't just like acts of violence. They were about,
dominance
and possession. He sought to exert like absolute control over his victims, often, keeping souvenirs like clothing or jewelry as trophies of his conquests.
Wow. And that brings us to his escapes, I guess. I mean, the first one was almost comical. He jumped out of a courthouse library window while, supposedly prepping for his defense.
Yeah.
It's shocking how, like, lax the security must have been.
I know. And I think that escape, it really highlights, like, a key aspect of Bundy's personality, this arrogance and his, like, belief in his own intellectual superiority. He just underestimated the authorities, and he really believed that he could just outsmart them, which to some extent, he did. And then his second escape, I mean, even more audacious, right? He starved himself to fit through a hole in his cell ceiling, and he remained free for over a month. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, these escapes weren't just about freedom, right? It was about proving his dominance.
Yeah.
About, like, humiliating the system that was trying to contain him.
Right, exactly. And what's truly disturbing is that those escapes led to even more, horrific crimes. I mean, in Florida, he just unleashed this wave of terror, culminating in the brutal attack on the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. I mean, the scene was unimaginable, a true testament to the depths of his depravity.
Yeah, so let's talk about that attack, because
Right.
it really is, like, one of the most horrific incidents in this whole saga, right? I mean, 2 victims were found, like, barely recognizable, others severely injured, and then there was Kimberly Leach, just 12 years old, Bundy's youngest known victim.
God. The Chi Omega attack was like such a turning point. I think it shattered the illusion that Bundy was, simply a charming, well-spoken individual. I mean, the sheer brutality, the randomness of the attack, it shocked the nation. And I think it exposed the true monster beneath the mask.
Yeah. And yet, despite all his cunning, Bundy was eventually caught, right? And it all came down to, of all things, a routine traffic stop. It's almost ironic that a man who escaped prison twice was ultimately brought down by something so mundane.
It does, doesn't it? It almost seems fitting, I guess, that this master manipulator, this criminal mastermind, was ultimately undone by his own carelessness,
Yeah.
But, his capture was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would, expose the full extent of his crimes and really force us to confront this darkness that lurks within, seemingly ordinary individuals.
Right. And that darkness led to one of the most, I think, groundbreaking moments in forensic science. And that's the use of bite mark evidence.
Oh, yeah. Forensic odontology. The study of teeth and bite marks, it played a crucial role in Bundy's conviction. Dr. Richard Sauveron, who is a forensic odontologist, he matched bite marks on one of the victims to Bundy's teeth, providing, irrefutable evidence of his guilt.
It's amazing how, like, a seemingly small detail, like a bite mark, can be the key to solving such a complex case.
Absolutely. It was a pivotal moment, not just for Bundy's trial, but for the field of forensic science as a whole. Really, it demonstrated the power of this new technique and its potential to bring criminals to justice.
Yeah. And speaking of justice, Bundy's trial became a media spectacle, right? I mean, he was so arrogant, representing himself, reveling in all the attention. And let's not forget those groupies either. The women who were, like, drawn to him despite the horrific nature of his crimes.
Oh, yeah. It's a disturbing phenomenon, isn't it? This fascination with evil. But it's important to remember that, behind the spectacle, behind the headlines, there were real victims, real families whose lives were just shattered by Bundy's actions.
Oh, absolutely. And as Bundy's trial unfolded and the evidence mounted against him, he kind of started to realize the gravity of the situation. you know? And in a desperate bid to delay his execution, he started confessing to his crimes, chillingly calculating the number of victims. It was as if he was trying to maintain some semblance of control, even in the face of his impending doom.
Yeah, his confessions were really just this mix of like, bravado and desperation.
Yeah.
He said, we came up with we added them up together. It's like he was tallying a score, like a final act of defiance.
It's hard to fathom the depths of his depravity. I mean, even in his final moments, he seemed more concerned with his own legacy than with the pain and suffering he had inflicted on countless families.
Right, and that lack of remorse, that chilling detachment, that's what makes Bundy's case so enduringly fascinating and horrifying,
It's a case that continues to haunt us, forcing us to confront this darkness that can reside within the human heart. But it also, I think, reminds us of the importance of vigilance, right? Of understanding the warning signs and of empowering potential victims to protect themselves.
Absolutely, right.
We can't just rely on, technology or law enforcement to keep us safe.
Right, yeah.
Which raises, I think, a really crucial question. How could someone like Bundy operate for so long? What factors allowed his reign of terror to continue?
Well, I mean, we've touched on some of those factors already, haven't we? I mean, lack of communication between law enforcement agencies was a huge issue, right? I mean, back in the 1970s, information sharing it wasn't as streamlined as it is today. Like, imagine if those different jurisdictions had, connected the dots sooner.
Oh yeah, it's a chilling thought. Who knows how many lives could have been saved? And yeah, like we said, there were those technological limitations of the time too, right? Well, today, DNA evidence would likely play a much more crucial role in linking crimes and identifying suspects.
Exactly. While Bundy was, very good at covering his tracks, advancements in forensic science have made it much harder for, for criminals to operate with the same level of impunity. But even with all the technology we have today, it's crucial to remember that the human element remains paramount.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Technology is just a tool at the end of the day. But it's the investigators. It's the witnesses. It's the decisions that are made. Those are the things that ultimately impact the outcome of a case. And in Bundy's case, his own, intelligence and manipulative charm. Those things played a pretty significant role in his ability to evade capture for so long.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guy was a master manipulator. He understood human psychology, and he used it to his advantage. He could appear charming, trustworthy, even vulnerable, disarming potential victims and witnesses alike.
It's a chilling reminder that, evil doesn't always come with a flashing warning sign, right? It often hides in plain sight, disguised as something, familiar, even appealing. Which brings us back to, I think, that fundamental question that has kind of haunted us throughout this whole deep dive. Can we ever truly understand the motivations of someone like Ted Bundy? I mean, was it nature? Was it nurture?
Yeah.
Or was it just this toxic cocktail of both?
Well, I mean, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's no, easy answer.
Yeah.
Some experts, they point to his troubled childhood as kind of laying the groundwork for his distorted view of the world. Think about it. The fabrication of his family history, the potential for abuse. I mean, these things could have created this really deep sense of shame and insecurity, leading to this need for control and just a total lack of empathy.
So you're saying that his childhood experiences, they might have shaped his perception of relationships and his need for power and ultimately his descent into violence.
I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but we also have to consider the role of, psychopathy. I mean, the Bundy displayed a lot of, the classic traits: lack of remorse, superficial charm, manipulative nature, and just this profound inability to connect with others on an emotional level. It's like he saw people as objects, not individuals,
Which is a terrifying thought. I mean, if you don't see others as human beings, then it becomes so much easier to dehumanize them, to justify, inflicting pain and suffering.
Exactly. And that detachment, that lack of empathy, that's what made his crimes so cold and calculated. I mean, they weren't just acts of passion or rage. They were carefully planned, almost ritualistic in nature.
And that's what makes figures like Bundy so terrifying, right? They challenge our very understanding of human nature. We want to believe that there's a clear reason, a single event that explains their descent into darkness.
Right, but the reality is often much, much more complex. There's likely a combination of factors at play, genetics, childhood experiences, personality traits, societal influences. It's like a puzzle with many pieces, and we may never have all of them. It's like trying to solve an equation with missing variables. We can analyze the evidence, we can study the psychology, but ultimately there's a part of their darkness that remains elusive,
Yeah.
unknowable.
Yeah, and that's perhaps the most unsettling aspect of it all. The idea that evil can exist without a clear explanation, without a readily identifiable cause. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the monsters are real, and their motivations may forever remain shrouded in mystery.
God, that's it's a chilling thought. But it also, I think, underscores the importance of vigilance, right? Of understanding the warning signs, of empowering potential victims to protect themselves. We can't just rely on, technology or law enforcement to keep us safe.
Right, I completely agree. It's about being aware, trusting our instincts,
Yeah.
and not being afraid to, speak up if something feels wrong. It's about knowing that evil can wear many masks, and that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who appear the most harmless.
Yeah, that's a sobering thought. It's almost like we need to develop this sixth sense, a radar for detecting those subtle signs of danger. Bundy's case really serves as a stark reminder that we can't be complacent, that we need to be proactive in protecting ourselves and those we care about.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about these types of crimes, about the psychology of predators, the better equipped we are to recognize,
Sure.
potential threats and make informed choices about our safety.
It's not about living in fear, right? It's about being informed
Yeah.
and empowered. It's about understanding that while we can't control everything, we can control how we respond to potential dangers. We can choose to be aware, to be vigilant, to be prepared.
Right. And we can choose to, learn from the past in cases like Bundy's to ensure that, future generations are better equipped to confront the darkness that lurks in the shadows.
It's a battle we may never fully win,
Yeah.
but it's a battle worth fighting. And as we kind of, delve deeper into this world of forensic science, we see how technology is playing this increasingly crucial role in that fight.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the advancements in forensic science since Bundy's time have been, remarkable. DNA analysis, criminal profiling, crime scene reconstruction. I mean, these are all tools that are constantly evolving, helping investigators solve crimes and bring perpetrators to justice.
Yeah, it's fascinating how technology is kind of changing the game, right? Tipping the scales in favor of law enforcement. So what are some of the most significant advancements that you've seen in recent years?
Well, I mean, DNA analysis has revolutionized the field. I mean, it's now possible to, identify individuals from the smallest trace of biological material, linking them to crime scenes with the level of certainty that was unimaginable just a few decades ago.
It's incredible how a tiny drop of blood or a single hair follicle can provide such irrefutable evidence. What about criminal profiling? Has that become more sophisticated?
Oh, absolutely. Criminal profiling has become much more nuanced and data driven. We're now able to analyze vast amounts of data to identify patterns in criminal behavior, predict future actions, and even narrow down the pool of potential suspects.
It's almost like we're developing a scientific understanding of evil,
So in a way, yeah. By studying criminal behavior, we're gaining these insights into the dark side of human nature, which hopefully will allow us to develop more effective strategies for
prevention and intervention.
It's a fascinating and somewhat unsettling field of study, but it's also incredibly important. The more we understand about the criminal mind, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and our communities. Exactly. And that knowledge extends to understanding, the societal factors that contribute to crime, poverty, inequality, lack of education. I mean, these are all issues that need to be addressed if we truly want to create a safer world.
It's a complex problem with no easy solutions.
Yeah.
But by acknowledging the role of these social determinants, we can start to develop, I think, more holistic approaches to crime prevention, focusing not just on punishment,
Yeah.
but on rehabilitation and social justice.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, where crime is not seen as a viable option.
Right. It's a long-term goal, but one worth striving for. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into the dark world of Ted Bundy, there's one final detail. It's rather haunting, I think, that I think we should discuss.
Yeah, you're referring to Bundy's final request, aren't you? The one that sends shivers down my spine every time I think about it.
Exactly. In his final hours, Bundy requested that his ashes be scattered in the Cascade Mountains.
Oh, God. The same mountains where many of his victims were found. Just a chilling final act from a man who seemed determined to haunt us even in death.
Yeah, it's a haunting image, isn't it? Almost like he wanted to remain connected to his crimes, to those places where he, committed those unspeakable acts.
Yeah.
Even in death, it's like he sought to exert control, to leave his mark on the world,
Yeah, it really does. I think it speaks volumes about his psyche, that need for control, the lack of remorse, the chilling detachment. I mean, all the things we've been, talking about, it all kind of culminates in this final macabre gesture.
It's a reminder that even though, Bundy is gone, the ripple effects of his actions continue to be felt. The families of his victims, I mean, they still carry those scars of his brutality, and his case continues to fascinate and horrify. I think it serves as this cautionary tale about, the dark potential that exists within seemingly ordinary individuals.
Absolutely. Bundy's story is a stark reminder that, evil can wear many masks. It can hide behind a charming smile, a charismatic personality, a veneer of normalcy. And that's perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this whole case.
Yeah, because it forces us to confront this uncomfortable reality that we can't always judge a book by its cover, right? We can't rely on appearances or superficial charm to determine someone's true nature.
Right, exactly. We have to be more discerning, more aware of those subtle signs of manipulation and deceit. We have to trust our instincts, and we have to be willing to speak up if something feels wrong.
Yeah, it's about empowering ourselves, about taking responsibility for our own safety and the safety of those around us. And I think part of that empowerment comes from, from knowledge.
Yeah.
The more we understand about these types of crimes, about the psychology of predators, the better equipped we are to recognize potential threats.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is our best defense, really, by studying cases like Bundy's, by delving into the complexities of criminal psychology. We can learn to identify the red flags, the warning signs that might otherwise, go unnoticed.
It's almost like we're developing a sixth sense, a radar for detecting those subtle cues that indicate danger.
Precisely. And that knowledge can be, it can be life-saving. It can empower us to make informed decisions, to trust our gut instincts, and to remove ourselves from potentially dangerous situations.
It's not about living in fear. Right. It's about being aware, about being prepared. It's about understanding that while we can't control, everything that happens in the world, we can control how we respond to it. Yeah. We can choose to be vigilant, to be proactive, to be empowered.
Right. And that's ultimately what this whole, this whole dip dive has been about, I think. Empowering ourselves with knowledge, with understanding, so that we can, we can navigate the complexities of the world with a greater sense of awareness and preparedness.
So as we conclude our exploration of Ted Bundy's dark legacy, what's the one key takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
I think that the most important message is this: evil exists, but so does hope. We can learn from the darkness. We can study the patterns, and we can use that knowledge to create a safer world for ourselves and future generations.
That's a powerful message. A message of hope, of resilience, of the enduring power of the human spirit to confront darkness and emerge stronger on the other side.
And on that note, I think it's time to step out of the shadows and into the light.
Yeah, I agree. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe. And remember, knowledge is the best way